watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Angela.
Time now for the papers today, and joining us today, the married duo of former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. Morning to you both. Let's kick straight off with someone who's always controversial, Sadiq Khan in the Sunday Telegraph.
Yes, I mean, this is just the gift that keeps on giving. Sadiq Khan and his expanded ULEZ zone, which is
ultra-low
emission zone for vehicles, which is encroaching into the home counties. The piece here in the Telegraph, I love it because it refers to Surrey County Council and indeed my own county of Kent as rebel counties.
Oh.
They are fighting back against the London Mayor's expansion plans.
Yes.
And quite rightly so.
Can he expand into the home counties?
Well,
He's Mayor of London, isn't he?
And I think this is largely the problem, is that he wants to expand it out into outer London boroughs, which most of them have that border with Kent, or Surrey, places like that, and into Essex. So you get that real difficulty of people that live just beyond the boundary but use a local set of shops or a hospital or a school will have to go through the ULEZ zone and pay extra money for it.
We should explain what the ULEZ zone is. It's all to do with emissions, isn't it?
It is all to do with emissions, so it's an ultra-low emissions zone to reduce the amount of pollution in the air in London. Why we need to expand this out when the pollution in the outer reaches isn't that bad.
It's actually less than central London.
It is much less than central London. And I think people especially in places like Kent, where I live, and my local county councillor, David Brazier, who is the cabinet member for Highways, is quoted in this article, suggesting that councils are now looking at whether to ban the Mayor of London from having signage on the boundary that would suggest people travelling from, example, Kent into the zone. Those signs would be banned, because if there is no sign, you cannot be reasonably expected to pay for something that you didn't know was there. So they are testing the boundaries of the law to see if that is possible. And there are a lot of councils, Bromley, Bexley, Harrow, Hillingdon, are all looking at different types of action that they can take against the London Mayor for what they see as an encroachment onto their territory.
And we should say it's £15 a day if you
£15.
go into that area, and
Yep.
it will hit the poorer people of the community, because they are the ones who will not be able to go out and buy modern cars with less carbon monoxide. They are the ones who are going to be paying through the nose for this.
That's right, and there will be a scrappage scheme that is coming into London, which gives those on low incomes money off against a new vehicle, but that doesn't extend out into the outer boroughs. So
I mean, Surrey Council seems to have come up with an idea that seems reasonable. Obviously, it depends who has to pay this, but if you're an NHS worker and you have to go to work every day and you're going to be hit with this kind of cost, that's phenomenal.
It's £15 a day.
Yeah, so I mean, what Surrey is suggesting is there are free corridors for NHS workers to get to hospitals.
That may not suit them on their route to work.
Well, I mean, I suppose it depends where the corridors go and where they are. But the idea that they would get to work free is not a bad idea.
Well, they're just going to get jammed up. Don't you think they should?
Everybody will.
Don't you think Sadiq Khan should just keep his nose out of counties that he doesn't run?
Well, there's always that.
yes.
Oh, well, he'll have a fight on his hands anyway, and I think the hope is that they will be able to stop him at his own boundary, which is bad enough as it is.
Yes.
Right, Nigel, Sunak's threat to pull the UK out of the ECHR. Tell us what that is and why he wants out.
The ECHR is the European Convention on Human Rights,
yes.
And so it is the European Human Rights Court, which people get quite aerated about. What Rishi Sunak wants to do is bring in a whole load of different laws to try and curb immigration, which one understands is one of the big issues that people care about at the moment. It looks like that cross-channel migration will go up by another 20,000 this coming year. The trouble is that whatever he comes up with, as the Sunday Times put it, will stretch the boundaries of international law. So the answer then is, let's pull out of the convention. I think that, I hope he doesn't. I think it would be a bad thing to go and do that.
Well, can't we have our own legislation on human rights?
Sorry?
Can't we just have our own legislation on human rights?
Well, you can, but the whole point about especially when it comes to dealing with asylum seekers, is international law. absorbs, obviously, as people coming from other countries. And the danger about pulling out of international treaties is we become a pariah. It may well affect our trade. And also, it's thinking about what the European Court, the good things it's done. And an example would be that up until 2000, that men and women in the armed forces who were gay were jailed or thrown out of the armed forces. As a result, they've suffered poverty, humiliation, shame ever since. Now, it was the European Court that put an end to that.
Yeah, but just because they've done some good things doesn't we need to say anything. Well, what do you think, Claire?
I mean, this is a really tricky one because you are looking at something which is stretching the boundaries of law. Now, I can see the attraction of having the UK courts putting the law through and us abiding by that, and that will be thoroughly tested. And you can see that if you have the judiciary agreeing that the law of the country is safe and it is sound, why then would you allow Strasbourg to come over and say, well, we think you're doing it incorrectly? So it's one of these issues that is worth investigating, but I think there have to be some really strong caveats that you cannot go against international law. As Nigel just said, we don't want to be in the same category as somewhere like Russia, as a pariah state. None of us want to see that, but I think we need to understand fully the impact it would have. This isn't going to come in for some time. As Tim Shipman says here in this piece, that it looks like it will form the next Conservative manifesto for the election. So it isn't going to come in for some time. It is very attractive to a certain portion of the Conservative Party and will also put enormous pressure on Labour to come up with alternative plans for immigration, which they have been decidedly tricky on. They haven't got a clear plan, so therefore we're pushing them into a corner. So from that point, I think it's a great idea.
Sniggers from this.
Actually, the trouble is Claire's right. I mean, Labour really don't have a plan on immigration. That they talk about beefing up the National Crime Agency, but don't get much further than that. Until we get to a point where people don't have to claim asylum within this country, the problem continues. It's got to be an international agreement.
Oh, you need to get him properly trained so he just says yes.
I'm trying.
Now, do you two, when you get home on a Sunday morning, like a nice big fry-up, Claire?
Oh, do you know, there's always a place for a fry-up. And our local Greasy Spoon Cafe, Dolly's Diner in Longfield, heartily recommended. A little shout-out to them.
Oh, they'll love you.
They will, and they are fantastic, but it's a
Get
real
an extra
treat.
egg for that.
Absolutely. It's a real treat to have one. It's not something that I have frequently. But we have here the chairman of the English Breakfast Society.
What?
English Breakfast Society, such an august institution, has stated that Greasy Spoon cafes have killed off the English breakfast by making it cheap.
What?
He is suggesting that we need to spend £50 or upwards.
That would kill it off.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would kill it
Yeah, well,
off.
it's mad. And the whole point about going to a Greasy Spoon is that, you know, for 10 to 15 quid, you get a really good fry-up.
And that much?
The idea of spending £50, you just wouldn't do it.
5-6 quid, isn't it?
5-6 quid.
And a proper mug of tea.
Build
Yes.
Yeah, stand your spoon up in it. And white toast.
White.
Lots of butter.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Something like that is a
Extra.
treat. You want that kind of breakfast.
But also, it's when it's made in like lashings of fat and all the rest of it, and you're paying a £5 for it. It just tastes better.
It does, and it's a bit of an institution.
Yeah.
You go in there, you see lots of different people. Everybody is in our cafe is very friendly. Everybody gets on. People pass salt or ketchup down for you, and it's just a lovely atmosphere. And it's a real sort of heart of the community. And I think if you start to make this gentrified, you lose that. It's not the point of it.
Who's going to
Something
spend
you
50
enjoy.
quid on a breakfast?
Nobody.
Well, not us, anyway.
Oh,
Anyway,
Dolly's Diner, is it?
Dolly's Diner.
Right, Dolly, we'll be down.
There. Nigel, in The Observer, you're looking at aristocrats apologising for owning slaves.
That's right. This is the Trevelyan family, and they owned 1,000 slaves on the Caribbean island of Grenada. They were compensated by nearly £27,000 when slavery ended in 1834, which was a huge amount of money in those days. What they want to do is go back to Grenada, apologise for what they did there when they owned 6 plantations, and give £100,000 to the islanders.
Each?
Not each. I mean, a total of £100,000.
Right.
So, I mean, on one hand, what they do with their own money is up to them.
Yeah.
I do worry a bit about us apologising or making reparations for things outside living memory. There has to be a kind of cut-off point where we say, look, we did bad things in the past in history, but if there are if it's not in living memory, there are no relatives now who were affected, I'm not sure we can keep going back and back in history to say, oh, we shouldn't have burned those people at the stake or something like that.
And at what point do we charge the Italians for when, as the Romans, they came and invaded Britain?
Exactly, yes. Or even the French for the Battle of Hastings.
Yeah,
I mean, it can go on, really.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Claire, you don't strike me as someone who particularly wants a load of liposuction, but you never know.
It's the goodie bag.
Not on my watch, anyway.
No.
Oh, well, we'll see. I always find it fascinating that something like the Grammys, so this is for Hollywood stars, apparently there was the inclusion of a £15,000 voucher towards liposuction. When you look at the kind of people that attend these ceremonies, there isn't an ounce of fat on them in the first place.
No.
And also, they could more than afford to pay for it.
But it's the goodie bag, isn't it?
It is.
Have you ever seen what's in the one for the Oscars?
Outstanding. It is absolutely amazing that these people get given so many things.
Yeah.
I would be really grateful for dinner at Dolly's Diner. if anyone's offering a free.
There's an opportunity for Dolly's.
But £8,200 worth of Botox is on offer. So I would be
Botox is that?
a lot. Trust me on that. And I would be dipping into those. And
Your
taking
face
those
would just
myself.
go like that, wouldn't it? It wouldn't
look
stop
like-
with that amount. Oh, can't bear it. Can't bear to think
bit like-
about
There's
it.
nothing
No.
wrong
I think
with
Simon
that.
Cowell's had a lot of Botox lately.
You can have too much.
Well, maybe he had one of the goodie bags last year.
Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
subtlety is everything when it comes to it. But I do think it's quite amazing that these very rich people are given a lot of expensive gifts for turning up to something which they may or may not win an award.
No, fair point.
And we have-
We're out of time.
We are,
Are we?
because you had a super story about pulling faces, but
go on,
people
pull
will. People will have to read the Telegraph to find out what it is.
Afraid so. Putting faces to dogs.
Yes.
Basically it.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to it. Thank you both very much
Thanks.
indeed. Have a happy breakfast when you get home.